Good evening. This is the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board, February 18th, 2025. Calling to order at 5:03 PM. And have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So move. Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. DeCosta?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
And Mr. Sherwin?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Draft minutes for February 4th. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? If not, and you want to wait, say so. Otherwise, are there any revisions requested or a motion to approve, please?
I'll motion to approve. I'll second that.
Motion's made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson to approve the draft minutes of February 4th, 2025. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Jim, were you here?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, okay, approving the minutes,
Aye.
February 4th, and Bob, you were absent last meeting.
Correct.
Chair votes aye. Nothing on chairman's report. Sheila is off island. She said she will make it next month. Marine Department report. Or, I'm sorry, Natural Resources report. Mr. Carlson with us tonight.
I will try my best to
Thank
fill
you.
in for Tara, and give a little update. The hatchery is getting underway. I know we fired up our photobioreactors. A little bit of pain and suffering, but they're going. We're producing algae. I think we're gonna start conditioning shellfish soon. I know it's been cold. From that regard, I think other things of interest that you guys are interested in sometimes. Again, we're looking at starting to put out procurement for pond openings, and we're wrapping up hopefully our 10-year permit to do Sackage Pond. So kind of stay tuned for that. The other thing that's kind of interesting that we're starting to do is we're starting to look at some of the ponds for improved water quality and starting to relook at the benthic communities that are there and doing some actual field surveys and measurement of the rebound of those communities, little invertebrates and things that live down there. And starting that this coming season, will be on the to-do list. Other than that, I think we're pretty much business as normal for cold middle of February. That's not updated, probably something like that.
Jeff, any ponds that are like high on the radar for issues that you know of that should be of concern? And is there any action moving forward in the plans for the Maya Comet Pond dredging we've heard about?
Sure, no, I'm happy to talk about that. So my Comet Pond dredging project, we have all but one permit. We're still waiting for a permit from the Corps. We've been informed that that should be forthcoming here. They're just extraordinarily slow with permits right now, kind of in New England and elsewhere. That'll push that dredging not to before this season. We won't have time to get that done. It'll take place next fall, winter, and hopefully be done before. Or we can start playing hockey on the pond. So be nice. See if it freezes next year like it did this year too. So we've pushed that back. That doesn't affect the grant we received from the state, the $1 million grant that we got from those folks to do that project. So we're pretty much full speed ahead. I know we're gonna start probably the procurement cycle on companies to do that dredging here in probably the next 60 days or so. Hopefully we'll have that last permit. With all of that, we have done a kind of, don't do it often, a pre-procurement kind of mailing to some companies, local and also regional, that do this kind of work. There aren't a lot of companies around that will come and dredge whole ponds of this size. Just put it on the radar. There's been a lot of interest. There's been a lot of interest in doing projects that are joint both between some of these larger companies with an on-island company that can help with some of the technical support, some of the physical support. But we're excited to get that out and see what comes of it. I think it's an interesting first run at it. Obviously, Sacagawea and Hummock probably have some need for similar things as well. So it'd be nice to get one under our belt and hopefully see some success and get there. And I think it'll open up a world of possibilities, both permitting for us and also feasibility, so we can start tackling some of those projects. You know, we have a whole list of stuff we'd like to do, like, you know, some work on Long Pond and Madigan Ditch, some work in Hummock Pond, some work at Sacagawea Pond, or other things that come our way. So it's chugging along.
Rob?
Couple things on the ponds. One is, I don't know about now, but the last time I tried, my Comet had a lot of eels in that pond. And if we're gonna dredge, what's gonna happen to all the spoils? Where are they gonna go? And do we wanna try to think about trying to trap some of those eels and get them out of the pond? We should at least maybe set some traps in there and give an idea of what's in there. Cause I mean, when Glenn Edwards was alive and when I was doing a lot of bass fishing from the beach, I would set eel traps in that pond and get a lot of eels out of that pond. And when they start dredging that mud, those eels are gonna come out with it. And I'd hate to see that resource wasted. You know, that pond was open and closed for a lot of years and those eels would come in and out and then they close and they live in fresh water just as well as they do in salt water.
Okay, now, I was gonna ask that. Oh,
There even supposedly there's even blue claws in there. I mean, Mickey Beamish told me he used to catch blue claws in there in his minnow traps. So I never actually tried to trap it, but it might be worth setting a few traps in there and just see what we get.
Yeah, I think that, sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I was gonna say, I think during the summer, I think that's something that we could certainly do. Is set a few eel traps and probably some crab pots and things and see what come in. I know we've documented blue claws and Hummock and Sacagawea Pond, obviously, but I think that'd be good. I do know part of the screening procedure for that, the dredging that's getting used, there's a it's essentially like a cutter head with suction sold. So there's a way to hopefully screen some of that and then it'll be moved and dewatered at the wastewater treatment facility. But I think to address that question, I could probably set up a time for our dredge engineer to maybe answer questions about how they can
Well,
try to mitigate that or.
I'm not thinking so much about once the dredging starts, what's gonna happen is gonna happen. I was thinking there are some guys that used to, I don't know if there's anybody that's still interested in commercial eeling, but there's a lot of eels in that pond. It doesn't take a lot, it doesn't take a lot to trap them, and maybe somebody goes in there for the summer and sets eel traps and cages them, because we all used to do it when I was younger. We'd trap eels all summer and cage them up, and then the guy would come to the truck and take them all in one fell swoop, and they're worth a couple bucks a pound. So it might be, if we throw some traps in there and see what's there, and we find there's a lot of eels in there. I know Glenn Edwards, when he was eeling, he used to catch millions of pounds of eels a year, and he'd get more of them out of the ponds than he would out of the harbors. So, you know, I think there's probably still a lot of eels in there. They live in mud puddle, for crying out loud. So
Yeah.
it's worth at least seeing what's in there. The only other thing I have on the ponds, and this is on my stupid, crazy wish list, is, you know how I feel about dredging Long Pond, and it's not even so much First Bridge now, having looked at it, as it is the entrance to the creek by the boatyard. It's very, very shallow there. And the problem is you don't have the velocity in that pond that we used to have. The amount of current that runs in and up on that ditch, because it's so shallow, it's decreased the velocity that comes through that pond. And the other end of that pond up around Massasoit is just, it's not healthy. It's got a lot of growth in there, and that's where the heron seem to go, and the few that do come in to spawn. The simple way in a perfect world where we didn't have to go through 6 million permits would be to just open the pond on the ocean side of the end of Massasoit and let it flush from that direction, because that would give that top end of that pond a huge flush. But I don't know what would be involved in permitting that. And the other one that we used to open when I was younger that they don't open anymore is Capom. And Capom was That used to be a really healthy pond too, and it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of life in that pond anymore. It might be worth considering putting on the list to eventually open once or twice a year. I mean, that pond was at one point the harbor for Nantucket. That's where the
Right.
settlers came in. That, I mean, when I was a kid, that pond opened and closed every spring and it had all kinds of life in it. It seems to be kind of void of any kind of life right now, so.
Seems to be the first one where the signs go up for the algae blooms, isn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, and I know that's a pond that NCF has started to do some work. I know they did some phosphorus treatments in that pond. Been starting to, but I can certainly at least find out what their plans are and what they're doing, and then maybe.
That was always a brackish pond when I was a kid and it would always be flushed.
Big deal there, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's
I
feasible
think-
to do or not, but
Yeah,
I'd like to see that pond get healthy again.
right.
I disagree.
Any other questions,
Yeah,
comments?
Jeff,
Peter?
when you said Sacagawea is at the end of its 10-year Army Corps permit, does that mean that'll get renewed?
Yeah, we currently have an application in for renewal, so we're anticipating hopefully getting that back soon. Emma started that process the better part of 8 months ago to try to get it in time for this year. But they're slow.
Jim?
Jeff, I was just curious if you could tell us anything about the dredging that took place at Highline Slip.
Sure, so, they did some emergency dredging or what they claim for emergency dredging to come in. They are having problems that they had documented back to the Concom and to the state of the High Line during certain tidal cycles running aground. And they requested enough relief to remove material to be able to pass during all tidal cycles. And then they're supposed to be coming back to permit a larger scaling dredging effort. I think they've filed that application and we can probably get those plans to you guys to take a look at if those are in for what the final dredge footprint would look like. But I know that first step was just to prevent the highline from touching the bottom at low tide.
Where did they
Alright.
bring this?
I don't know, they trucked it offside.
They took it on a barge and took it
It was
away.
on a barge, yeah.
I don't know where they dumped it, if they took it all the way to Cape or.
I can find out for you guys though.
And to quickly, Jeff, to back up on the sediment from Maya comment, you mentioned dewatering it and bringing it to the treatment plant to dewater. Will it stay at the treatment plant to like fill old sewer beds that were in jeopardy of erosion or?
So it's gonna be kind of a mixed pile, right? So one of the things that we're able to do when we haul that out is we can separate that material by essentially by soil type, right? You can suspend that in the slurry and the sand and silt set up a little differently. And then also as you kind of obviously dredge down, those layers will change. So some of it will be cleaner sand, some of it will be siltier. We're hoping to separate out as much clean sand as possible. And then obviously after some testing, we may be able to reuse that sediment for things like beach nourishment projects. I know there's some interest, especially in front of the wastewater treatment facility of having some flexibility to help protect that area. Some of the silts and some of the other material may get used to fill in some of the decommissioned beds that are there if necessary. We've also, for that upper layer, done a lot of testing for its potential use as a compost supplement or agricultural supplement. So it may be something that we're able to put out for somewhere like, Bartlett's or, Tuscany makes a composting project now to be able to purchase to use since it's, we're kind of soil limited here, is to be able to use for that. We haven't found anything that's problematic as far as like heavy metals or VOCs or anything. It's just been really nutrient rich soil, so it may be something that helps offset a fertilizer cost for those guys. So I think we'd like to reuse as much of it as possible, not just for maybe filling in those beds, but also if there's extra to do it. So that project looks like it's gonna create about, you never know for sure, about 105 to 125,000 cubic yards of material. So there'll be a lot. I think the guys described it as if you built a warehouse over a football field that was 30 feet high, that we would have like 3 of those
So
full
there's gonna be a lot of trucking involved.
potentially.
Wow. Do they know of the, well, I mean, I don't wanna get into it too depth now, but just the route, what those trucks are gonna go, and those are dirt roads, and
That'll
Yeah, so,
probably,
so from the pond itself, it's all gonna get slurried and pumped from the pond to the wastewater treatment facility.
oh, they're gonna pump it all that way. They're gonna lay a pipe that whole in. Well, I guess it's not that long.
wow.
Yes,
No.
right.
It's closer than you think.
Yeah.
We thought that was
Oh, yeah.
crazy at first, and then we
Yeah.
came out. There's gonna be one booster pump part way. But once they slurry it, it moves
Yeah, I've
pretty
seen them
easy.
pump it 3 miles down the beach, so I
Yeah.
guess it's not that far.
So they're gonna run it in there to dewater, and DEP is okay with using the decommissioned beds to handle all that, so.
Wow.
Knock on
Great.
wood, it'll actually go well.
And the water's mostly, at this point, it's probably 99% fresh. There's no salt there.
Yeah. Pretty clean, so it'll hopefully go pretty well. It's not gonna interfere with the biology.
So one of those decommissioned beds is gonna be a new eel pit.
Hopefully we'll get out as many before they get that far. They'll like the ride
It
to
all
get there.
depends what's in there. I have this vision of just a trap coming up solid full of eels, because there were a lot in there back when I was,
Wow.
15 years ago.
All right, Jeff, since we're talking about dredging, I don't wanna carry this out too long, but any progress on harbor dredging plan?
Yep, so that's still underway. We had a number of forums kind of through the season for prioritizing some of that, getting some public feedback. It's back with Arcadis and the folks that are working on that to put together some preliminary dredge footprints and templates from some of those. I know there's obviously some interest in, Pulvis Harbor is always a hot topic there. It's one of the priority spots. Easy Street Basin is another one that came up on the list a lot. Pocomo Channel came up a lot, so those are all ones for their kind of further engineering to get those back to everybody for what those dredge prisms will look like and kind of material, and then get that back in front of everybody. And kind of work publicly on what order makes the most sense and gets the best results for us, but I think the hopes are is to get that whole permitted. So we can do a little bit of dredging on a annual basis. Just to kind of keep up with it and create some material to be used elsewhere. And to try to stay on top of it. Some years will be more than others, maybe some years will be less, so we'll see. But it's getting closer. I think that should be out in the initial report, probably before the summer, and all that stuff.
Any state, federal or grant funding available?
Sometimes I'll be 100% honest, right now, federal funding is a little unpredictable.
It's locked up.
So I am not anticipating any right now to the degree of like counting on projects to be federally funded. If some becomes available, we'll certainly apply. We obviously have the inland dredge grant for my comment. The state seems to be committing funds to dredging still. And we'll be applying to those. I'm sure Dave has some insights on those. I know he's been involved with a lot of that, but we're always looking. Funds become available, we definitely will use it. Sometimes we like to tie those dredging projects to resiliency projects for reuse of that material.
Mhm.
And sometimes funds become available through that avenue too, so
Mhm.
we always are looking.
Thank you, Jeff. Dave?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm working with Wellfleet right now for a Seaport grant for their reconstruction of their commercial facility. But when I was talking to the director a couple days ago, the dredge the dredge funding window is open right now. But that's not going to help you because you got to have permits in hand and you got to, but I just want to remind you, and I'll send you her contact information. I just want to remind you that they have taken on the Division of Waterways dredging program. So that's a source of funding. And also, if you remember, Seaport likes to do things in phases. So they like to do, the analysis and the permitting, and then, once they're committed for 1 million or so, then they'll give you money for the actual project. But I'll send you an email with her contact information.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. I think at least even if we can get the planning efforts in front of that for them to take a look at.
Yeah.
It might help grease the wheels of permitting a little bit too.
Yeah, because that's, like I said, the application portal is open right now for that, but, um,
Yeah.
but you're not ready to go
We
there.
have
I'll
no
get you,
permit.
I'll get you the information though.
Next funding cycle will be ready.
Any more questions or comments on natural resources report? Anything in general for Jeff? Public comment on natural resources report? Gonna move into old business. Amendments to town shellfish regulations, or I'm sorry, submerged boat wreckage. Hazard off Monomoy. Jim, Sherwin, were you gonna be talking to Bruce about getting putting a map together? He was gonna pinpoint locations of 3 or 4 pieces of wreckage of concern. And pass that on to you, hopefully for a meeting in March.
I certainly can make a map with Bruce. He has written down coordinates for at least 3 different pieces that are there.
Yes,
Which I can get from him. And there's somebody also had, I don't know if he sent it to you, Andy, but there was a YouTube video of somebody getting their anchor caught on one of the boats that's there.
yeah, he sent that to me, a link of that, quite interesting, really, and unfortunate as well, but these things happen and hopefully it can be solved. So if I can leave that responsibility to you, Jim. Be nice to have it for the next meeting,
Okay.
with Sheila being here. So thanks, Jim.
I'll put that on my list.
Anybody else on the submerged boat wreckage off of Monomoy? Amendments to town shellfish regulations. Should we be continuing this until Tara comes back?
Oh, I can cover some of the questions
All right.
over there. Tara and I
Okay.
obviously talked about this quite a bit.
Oh, good.
Just our usual designated
Mm-hmm.
shed liaison, so. That's there. I think just to run through, if I can.
Yes,
the
please,
list that
Jeff.
she left for me.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of our comments on that, I think looking at the section that she gave us, the closures and red flag. The added text at the bottom, an emergency sea move is required, but an additional fishing day may be considered for a future Saturday. I think I might almost recommend, instead of changing it to just Saturday, to a future date designated by the town, because that way if we're out on a certain day, it doesn't have to be a Saturday. There may be other additional days available, whether it's if we get jammed up, I'd hate to put an additional day on a Saturday and lose it to weather. Well, we might be able to bump it to a Sunday or a different day, but I'm fine with Saturday too. Doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, no, I get you what you're saying, because if we just put in there an additional day, then if we, like you said, if Saturday's a crappy day and it's 22 degrees and Sunday's a gorgeous day, you can say, okay, we're gonna go Sunday, where we're locked in on the Saturday, so that makes sense to me. But also, you never know, you might want to go April 1st and go to the state and say, look, we just need a couple extra days. I mean, not that we probably want to do that, but it gives us a little more flexibility by saying an additional day, so that would make sense to me. I don't think it makes a bit of difference to the buyers because they really don't ship UPS on Saturday or Sunday. So actually might be better for the buyers if it's a Sunday, because then they get to ship the stuff out Monday morning. So,
I just, when we talked about it and kind of my thoughts on it were. I hate penning into specifics because I feel like anytime we do, we always get caught. And flexibility is always there.
I think we did it because that's what we do now with Christmas. You know,
Yeah.
we allow that following Saturday, which in December, when the weather's nicer, that makes sense. But if we had a Granny right now, say, and we were out there moving seed, there's a good chance that the Saturday might be a blowing 30 or too cold to go, where it just gives us some flexibility.
So I think that would be our thought on that one. That's all right. And then on the temperature restrictions, I know this has come up a lot as far as that. So we're in the process now of installing a weather station that's gonna post on Weather Underground at the hatchery at Brant Point. That way we have physical control over the weather station that's there. I unfortunately don't know what the Weather Underground designated code will be, but and I also, this always makes me nervous to have a specific website and regulations, because if that website changes or something happens, that's there, but I think our recommendation is to have something that an official instrument temperature determination will come from a site designated by the town of Nantucket that posts in real time, and then we can provide that information. That way, if Weather Underground goes away, we switch to weather.com or just post to the town website. We're not having to change rules for X. But other than that, I think that will hopefully solve that, and then I think going forward, we can designate the site as a backup, but hopefully we won't have to ever use that. And then that's a site that's publicly available for folks. It'll be labeled Brant Point Hatchery on the web, and then we can go over there.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
When we had the discussion last winter, and we all agreed, you know, that we were gonna go with the, and we were informed that Weather Underground got its reading for Nantucket from NOAA at the steamship authority's gauge. Wouldn't NOAA be the fallback if we're gonna be with Weather Underground?
Yeah, we typically use NOAA. I know we've had some issues with the steamship authorities gauges because it does post every 4 minutes, but those readings that are every 4 minutes are time delayed when they get posted. But we would like something that is not time delayed. But I think we would probably default back to NOAA as a backup, but I also think just for our own wants to have a weather station. I know we had one for a period of time at the Marine Department, and I thought that worked well, that posted to Weather Underground. That could be a little more stable now, but it's something that's on the water. It's close. We're physically there to maintain it. It's something that's physically in our control. We're not dependent upon a private property. We're not dependent on steamship authority. We're not dependent on NOAA. That's something that the town can be dependent upon itself. We've even considered also doing an additional one at the fire station here, just to have as a emergency. I know it's not right on the water, but it could also post. It seems like that's affordable to do both of those and to default to the hatchery station. But I think Dave put it well when last you guys talked about it, and last time I remember this was the town should really control that station, right? We should really take ownership of it to ensure that it's working and posting correctly.
And the key is the regulation shouldn't be specifying anything too specific.
Right, and I think it should be specific enough that it's something that the town has to do. That's how I always like to think of it.
Well,
I'm hoping that later in our agenda, we have under new business, we have the creation of the app. And what I'm really hoping is that between now and next November 1st, we can build or utilize a simple app that if we put a weather station at the hatchery, which is the most accurate for what's going on in the harbor. It's not at the fire station where you get down in the valley and it's 2 degrees cold. Like I leave my house, I live on Sesapana Road. I leave my house in the morning, it's 24 degrees. I get to the harbor, it's 30 because I'm down in the valley. This is actually on the water. It's going to give you an actual temperature. So that you can look at the app and you can get in real time what the temperature is. And if it says it's 28 degrees, I don't have to sit in Mattocket and wait 15 minutes for JC to drive out there to drop a flag. Because that's the other problem is right now everybody's dependent on the flags. So JC gets a reading. Now, if it's at Brand Point, he gets a reading, he goes to town, he drops the flag at Brand Point. Then he has to drive to Mattocket. Those guys have to wait 20 minutes. It should just be, you look at the app, as soon as it hits 28, you go.
That's actually a neat idea to have the flag on the
On
app.
the app, if you look at the temperature, it's very simple. The temperature shows on the app, it's gonna be what it is, and as soon as it hits 28, then everyone knows they can go. And if it goes below 28, then we have to come back in. Now, that gets a little more tricky because when you're fishing, you're not paying attention, and it's not like you have your phone right there. And in that case, I really believe that that we need to have some type of system where we don't have 300 scallopers anymore, we have 50 maybe at the height of the season. That JC can send out a group text or everybody can get a notification that the temperature's dropped and we all come back in. But we can deal with that down the road, but a simple app that gives you the temperature and gives you a few other things, and where at the end of the day, I can put down my license 1042, 6 boxes, it goes to Tara, instantly has it. I do it with all of my state and federal fisheries. Every one of them has an app. The minute I get in and report, boom, it's done. And it would be easier for you guys. It would be easier for all of us. It would take all this guesswork out of it. And I think we have enough time that we can design this. And then, like you said, you put the weather station right there at Brand Point, and everyone knows exactly this is what we're gonna use. Boom, done.
Jeff, thoughts?
Sure. I don't know. I know Dave's had his hand
Oh,
up for a while.
sorry, Dave, please, go ahead.
Yeah, number one, I'm happy that the town is gonna put in their own, because I was very skeptical about using a private site. I still believe that the NOAA site should be a fallback, because I believe it's very accurate, and I've used it for tide predictions for years for storm events, and I find it to be extremely accurate. And if that's the fallback, and as Bob said, we had talked about this app. I really believe that's the way to go. When we had 3 or 4 shellfish wardens, we had a warden in Mattocket when the flag was up. So one would call the other and they would take the flag down. But now, with a limited number of wardens, you're right. He has to get in the truck and he has to drive out there to take the flag down. So those guys are basically penalized 15 or 20 minutes. The app would solve a whole host of problems, including the reporting, which I'm still perplexed why we're not getting good weekly, monthly numbers on the reporting. But this would help with that too. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Give me to jump ahead. I can give an update on that too.
Yeah, that's
So since we're kind of talking about it.
Yeah,
kind of
they're all related.
So we've gone ahead, we did a little bit of research, obviously, you guys provided a number, there are a lot of fisheries related apps around now, right? Like you go out and catch tuna, you report it on your app, right? And we also looked at, there's a lot of hunting based apps, you go take your deer, take a picture of your deer, you send it in. I even know some states now that you send your picture in, they confirm your tags, and you really almost have like a personless check-in that you can do. So there's lots out there. So we're not reinventing the wheel, which makes it really easy. We've engaged our IT department. They're much more knowledgeable in this. We're hoping after school break to start our first kind of talk with a couple of the developers that already exist with our IT team and our office. Everyone that we've kind of preliminary talked to, generating something that has an informational piece. So as long as the data feeds to it, they can tap into, and then an informational piece back seems to be pretty straightforward and pretty easy to do. A couple of the ones that we've spoken to and a couple of the IT folks we talked to, even to have something where if Bobby makes an account, he doesn't even have to repetitively enter his information, right? He just opens it up for himself. He logs in and then he's already there. So he doesn't have to re-enter his license number or his name, it just goes right in. And it can feed into there, and then it's a little bit of, data curation on the back end, but I don't think it's overwhelming. I mean, we're not gonna be getting 1,000 data points a day, right? So I think all of it's there. I think it's should be easy for notifications. One of the other aspects that we're also looking into for it and hopefully making it things a little bit easier for folks is to create that user account and to also be able to do license, especially renewals, kind of online and through the app a little bit, where you can upload your state license, right? You take a picture of your state license, it uploads and goes through. That to maintain that account on a yearly basis, you just get the box checked and then still pick up your sticker just to have the card on you, but all of that can get maintained through there, similar to what we're doing now for moorings. So I think all of those pieces can go together, but I don't think it unreasonable to have something in place to at least try by next scallop season. Seems to be pretty doable for most of these places. Some of them get very presumptuous where they're like, oh, we could have that ready to roll out 60 days. Like, well, I'm not doubting you, but that's something that it looks like timeframe wise should be doable to do. It doesn't look like it's amazingly cost prohibitive to do. It's not gonna be, millions of dollars to do these things. Most of them exist.
And if we need a funding source, I think it's a perfect thing to go to the Shellfish Association for.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's just for commercial. I think that you could also get, when people get a recreational shellfish permit, they could log in and say, hey, I got my bushel this week.
Yeah.
Every button has a number on it. So, in my case, like you're saying, with the first time I log into the app, I have to put all my information in. The next time I log into the app, I just put in my number and everything comes up. And then I just fill in like 3 things and it's done. The same thing could happen with scalloping. So, I think it's the future. And I think it'll make everyone's life so much easier. And there's no more guessing about, well, what station are we using, what this, what that, everything's right there in real time.
And we also understand that not everyone, it's hard to believe this day and age, but it's something that we were cautioned by the developer and by ART. Not everyone has the same level of accessibility. Not everyone has an iPhone or a Galaxy or whatever platform they're using. That there are also ways to be able to log in, whether it's from a regular computer, if you want to. I think we'd be happy if someone has zero accessibility, if they came into the office and wanted to set up their account.
Yes.
Said, hey, we don't have this, I'm still gonna use my paper reports.
Mhm.
I think if we can go, if there's 100 licenses issued, if there's 95 that use the app and 5 that use paper, way better than we are today.
Well, and the 5 that use the paper, the 95 that have the app are gonna tell them, hey, it's warm enough to go, we can go. A lot of it's word of mouth, so.
I think we'll probably never get away from the flags in its entirety, because it's always best to be able to see too, but. Can do a little high.
So while you're developing that, can you also roll in oyster or any other shellfish that requires reporting?
So, yes, I'll say the guys that do aquaculture, they have a different reporting system. They have to do daily logbooks. That are required by the state. They're mandated by the state, and we use that for their reporting.
Okay.
I
just figured if you're going forward with.
We would love to. I think what we would have though.
That's the thing that's amazing is we all have to report our catches every day or on a timely basis to the state. Now, in the case of my state reports, you can either do it in bushels or you can do it in pounds. I choose to do mine in pounds. But I asked that years ago. I said, well, do you have access to the state data? Because everything that's there is there. And the answer is no. That's part of the problem is I have to report to the state and I have to report to the feds because they don't talk to each other. So the town's not going to talk to the state either because they they hold their data.
The last time we talked to the state about getting catch data, they will provide that to you, but only after they've reviewed it for the season that's concluded. So we get data that's 8 months after that season has closed. at best.
Right.
From them. If you're lucky.
Jeff, one of the thought is instead of having a group text, is to have an alert feature. But
Yeah.
by category,
Yeah.
an alert feature, so you're not, so you send an alert out because the temperature dropped, but you're not alerting all the private people too. You want to just alert your commercial scalpers.
Alert would come in great too for strandings.
Yeah, yeah, same type deal, but
I think all of those seem to include that. Kind of that push notification feature
Okay.
where you can
You
push
can
that out.
register for push notifications.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then some of it will also be right, and I would anticipate that when we roll that out. There'll be a piece of paper that people will still get that will say, if you want to enroll in this part,
Check
make
this
sure that
box.
that is. Checked, yes.
Right, okay.
To go through, obviously, there'll be a learning curve and, you
So
know,
when you, like, in my state license, when I renew it every year, it asks me, do I want to do E-trip reports or paper reports? I choose the E, but a lot of people probably still do the paper. So then you know, okay, this person is still gonna give me paper catch reports.
And then a lot of apps we get today, when you're installing an app on your phone, it'll say, can I send you notifications?
Yep.
Yes, no. It's
Yeah.
that simple. Yeah.
and I'm sure someone will pick no and we'll get to hear that I didn't get the notification, then we'll look at the setting that way you turn it off, but. I think that's what the goal is to at least provide the opportunity for people to get that information that way. It makes a lot of sense. You know, like I said, there's a gajillion apps and I know. People don't want more and more, but we would love to have a recreational component to that for people to at least. Send a picture of their catch in, so we can see it, if it's not a picture or an approximate number. Cause we don't really do a lot of tracking on recreational now, cause it's. Very all over the place, but I do think there would be an option too, right, for. Different species to go through, right, if you're a commercial cohogger to send your catch in.
If you are able to renew your permit online through this app, like when you get a new waterfowl license for the following year, when you get you get your state waterfowl license, they have this thing called the HIP report, highly migratory. I forget what HIP stands for, but it asks you, did you hunt ducks? Did you hunt geese? Did you hunt snipe? And if you did, how many did you harvest? So you could do that same thing with scallops. So when you renew your license, did you scallop this year? Did you quahog? Did you clam? Whatever, and they could say, how many bushels did you get? And most people, I think, will be more than happy to give the information. It will give you guys a much more accurate idea of what the recreational take is, because right now you sell 1,500 permits. I mean, unless you're out there counting heads and you don't know if they got half a bushel, a quarter of a bushel, or a bushel, it's hard.
Yeah, it's recreational haphazard at best.
Yeah.
And people go to weird spots and go out and get stuff, I think anything that we can get more information and make it easy, I would love to be able to post too, right, like if. We have a rain-based closure for shellfish in the summer, to be able to say, these areas are closed for the next 2 days. Right, like. Anytime we can cycle the information out better than just the town website is. Always better.
Mhm.
And I think it's. Not a heavy lift. I know it seems kind of daunting, but I don't really think it's that bad. There are enough really smart people that can figure that out pretty fast.
Well, quickly, I think I can say this on behalf of the board. Bob, thank you for inspiring this. And Jeff, thank you for already working on the implementation of it. This is tremendous. So is there more under amendments for shellfish regulation?
Yeah, Tara had a bunch more. I don't think I had any real issues, but can clarify a couple of these things. Like blue crabs were slated to remove off of the recreational table, but that's something that's a state regulated fishery. It's not a local regulated fishery. And those things, we don't have any jurisdictional authority on things like eels for local regulations too, and it was included in the table last time. And we're just trying to.
Is all crabs under state? Yeah, even green crabs.
Yes, like to take green crabs, especially commercially, you require at least an LOA from those guys.
Well, what about recreation? If somebody wants to set one pot for bait.
I'm not for certain, but I can find out. I'll let you know. I believe you still require some level of permission from the state, but I know we don't have a local.
When I was looking to start doing it, I was gonna feed off of, RJ Turcotte's permit. He was gonna send me a letter with, it authorized me to work pot under his permit.
I know a lot of people a lot of kids set crab traps, who would like to set crab traps in the spring for bait for tautog. And they get green crabs and they're our predator and it'd be a shame to tell a kid you can't set in a trap to catch 8 or 10 green crabs for bait. You know, I know guys on the Cape that do it, they get their crabs for the whole season and they get bushels of them. And in that case over there, their shellfish wardens and their environmental cops basically says, take as many as you want, because they're a predator and they just look the other way.
Yeah, I've never heard of JC or Sergeant Wright stopping anyone on green crabs.
I haven't.
Oh.
We'll talk about it later.
Good times. But I think that's something too, if we choose in general to not worry about green crabs, I think we can make that happen. And then the only other one that I wanted to touch on briefly, it's something that we've talked. Go ahead.
I just want to be clear, so we're dropping all crabs and we're dropping eels because they're off
We
the
don't
table because we don't have any regulation to them, which
Correct.
means, oh, the Leo, that's right, the environmental police are state, so they would cover that if they wanted to.
So if somebody wanted to get a
It's their
commercial
choice.
eel permit to say, eel in my comment, they would get that through the state. They wouldn't get a town license
Yeah.
Right, okay.
where they used to need one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. When you used to, a while back, when you get your recreational shellfish permit, then you get your sheet that you sign your name on, which would be your paper license, your paper permit, but on the back of that, it would show you all the stuff that you could take from
And
the
it
town.
included
And it said eels.
Right.
It said blue crabs, and oysters and anything else in a shell, pretty much. So would I have construed that to mean that the town regulated eels and the town regulated crabs and?
I don't think we distinguish between pure state and town regulations. Again, some of this is before my days too, and some of them overlap, but I don't believe we have actual authority to regulate some of those fisheries like we do with our shellfish.
So there's probably a state recreational limit for crabs, blue crabs,
Like blue crabs is 25 crabs.
Yeah.
That are 5.5 inches.
and eels probably has the same type of.
There are people taking blue crabs from that big up to whatever in buckets out of Pulpus Harbor. I mean, I kayak there all the time and you see people from, we'll say, other locations on the planet, just cleaning us out. I mean, maybe, do we have so many that blue crabs are a predator?
All crabs there. They're native to here. I think that's the difference between blue crabs and green crabs is, green crabs are not native invasives.
So that's an issue for the environmental police.
So when you do the dredging of my comment and you got all these eels, is there a report the town has to then file with the state?
If the state requires us to file it, then yes.
And would you keep the eels alive until you were done in the pond and then put them back in the pond, or
Let them go in the ocean.
that too?
Well, one of the things that they're gonna require for the dredging is an assessment of what's in there ahead of time. So they'll do a fin fish and eel and whatever else is living in there, whatever sea creature is living in there, but that'll be required before they get the permit to dredge.
Those 30-pound goldfish are gonna.
Those 30-pound goldfish that's from another planet.
Have you seen those, Dave? They got out of Gibby Birchall's Pond 20 years ago. They're this
Gibby
big.
Birch-
Vision was a snag one.
It flooded up by Gibby Birchall's and they
Yeah.
went overboard.
His koi got in there and they grew.
They look like ghosts swimming through that pond. They're wild.
Oh, wow.
But the last one I'll touch on, and then I think that's it from there, is we're working on a little bit of an overhaul on the apprentice program. We understand there's some problems. I think one of the ideas we have, and one that I just wanted to run by the group, is there seems to be two different kinds of apprentices that there's some interest in dealing with. There's I want to commercially take scallop apprentice, and then there's the group that are, I'm in high school, I wanna go with my dad or my uncle or whoever from time to time. I may or may not wanna take Shellfish, that to have some sort of. I'm gonna be on the boat, help call sign up, so guys get credit even if they're not taking to go. Just so we can log them in and make sure. I think obviously that could also be a criteria in the app to log your apprentice day. And, you know, if you're a high school kid who's just wants to go out for a day and see what it's like. End up wanting to count that as a day, that you can count it as a day, not have to pay for a full license to go and do it because you're not taking anything. But still get credit. I think that's something that's doable to do. I think we just wanted to at least concept that to say. To have a free apprentice sign up knowing that you can't take Shellfish without the license. Because if you're gonna harvest, you need to have a license.
Right, so. That, I brought this up, so like, I'll use Ray as an example. So Ray scalloped with me when he was in high school during Christmas vacation. He would come with me. We would still only get 5 boxes, but I had him hauling dredges, I had him throwing dredges, I had him learn how to tow, where to tow, how much to tow, how to decipher between adult and a seed. He did it all through college, and then when he graduated, he got his commercial license. He had at that time, it was 40 days.
Yep.
And I took some high school kids this year during their Christmas break, and so did Bruce and a few other people. And JC at the time said, well, they don't count because they don't have a license. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, this fishery, my biggest concern with this fishery is it's aging out. I mean, just look at the age of the guys that are fishing. There's not a lot of young guys coming into it. Granted, and when these kids want to go and learn, if they come fishing with me for 5 or 6 days, you know, I paid the kid $10 a box just to go, and he loved it, you know, and I showed him how to throw dredges and cull and look at adults and seed and not tow too long and all that. So he's actually learning. He's not just sitting up in the bow of the boat, just throwing shells into a box, which is what you really want to teach a kid or anybody new, you know, to get a license. Buy a license now and then be an apprentice for the first 20 days in November on somebody else's boat. Chances are you're not even in the back. You don't even realize you're not really learning anything. So I just want to make sure that we have the ability to count both. And the app would be perfect for that because I can just put his name in and say he fished with me today and, you know, tack a photo to it or whatever. But I think it's important for the future of the fishery to be able to let people do that. And it gives them time to get their 20 days over, or whatever we said, 25, I think it was.
Yeah.
Over the course of a few years. So that if they decide they want to buy a boat later on, they can.
Yeah, I think so. Our intention is to have that. Kind of 2-pronged apprentice, right? An apprentice that can harvest and an apprentice that's. Logging days to say, but they still. Even if it's same day or after the fact. Are registering, and the person that's holding that commercial license, like. You would call up and say, hey, I took Ray with me today. Here's his name, address, and phone number and email, so we want to send him information or he wants to email back and forth, we can correspond. And then we can at least keep a record of Ray DaCosta went, he went for, you know, one day, this was the day he went. And then if he converts to that different license, we can roll this day over, but there's a way to log that. I think the easiest way to track that's probably right now, even in the interim of the app, to say whoever the commercial license holder is that took them logs that day for someone that they took. And then just to codify that, so it's totally clear. I think that the easiest fix to that issue. At least that's what our idea is to do. So I agree. People should be able to go and learn, and if they're learning, should get to count, so. Seemed pretty straightforward from the idea, but that was the idea. But I think those are all of the big changes that Tara had left.
I just have one question. I didn't get a chance to go through this till just now, but what did we end up doing with the conch thing for the harbor where we have 3 guys that have conch licenses in the town. I don't see us getting a 4th unless somebody goes out and spends a ton of money.
I agree.
Two of the 3 have the potential to fish. One doesn't even have, as far as I know, doesn't even have a boat rigged right now. And I know there was discussion. I wanted to make sure that if only one guy's fishing or 2 guys are fishing, they utilize the 50 traps each. So in other words, if two guys fish, they get the other two, and the other guy doesn't, they should each get 25 of the other guys. And if only one guy's gonna fish, he should be able to set traps for the two that aren't fishing, so that, I mean, these are predators, the scallops, and we don't allow them to take them every other year, and there are a lot of conchs in the harbor. And I'd like to see the resource utilized to the best of its ability. So I just want to make sure that's clarified in there, how that's gonna work, because there needs to be some type of hard date before, I think April 15th is when conch season's open,
Yeah.
that, by, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out here, by March 1, if you're not gonna set gear that year, you need to let the Marine Department know, so they can let the guys that are gonna potentially fish know that, hey, there's 50 pots available for you to fish this year because so-and-so is not gonna use the permit.
Yeah, I know we had talked about that too, of setting that hard date as kind of the registration date. And then if you come in after the fact, if you decide in June and say, hey, I'm actually gonna fish, well. You talk to the guy that's got all the pots and you guys can make that one-time transfer.
Yeah, and I also want to make sure that this doesn't become an asset to the two guys that, or one guy or two guys or whatever that don't fish. That they hold their 50 pots ransom and say, oh, you can use my pots, but you gotta pay me for them, because it's not their, I don't agree with that. I mean, I see this done in the fisheries, other fisheries, and it drives me crazy that somebody's who's got some quota that hasn't fished it in years, decides now that quota is worth a lot of money, and he sits on his couch and makes more money than the guy that's busting his chops.
Yeah.
So, we want to get rid of these things, but we want to do it in a fair way. And if the guys that have the permits want to fish, great, but if you're not, set a hard date and say, I'm not going to fish by it, and then if that doesn't mean the other guy that is going to fish, or the other two guys that are going to fish, are going to set the gear, but at least it gives them the option.
Yeah, no, that's easy to add. Well, that's something I know JC and I had talked about years ago, having in, that it just makes sense. If you're gonna issue out tags, you issue out tags, and if you don't register by a certain date, then those tags are handed out to.
Yeah, because you can't just wait till the last minute, because if you gotta give the guy enough time to say, okay, I'm gonna go get 50 more traps or whatever it is I need to do. Bait, everything else, so. I just want to make sure we have that in there somehow.
You see them? Those are all the ones that she had marked up, so I think we can create a final draft for everybody. To review.
Bobby, do you think that there's somebody out there who wants to go for conch, or is it the guys that are doing it now are just gonna do it until they age out?
Danny will fish hard for conchs, for sure. I mean, he's got the gear, he's got the setup. Matt conked a lot of years, and I'm sure Matt doesn't want to lose his permit and give it up, but it all depends how busy he is with the oyster farm. I mean, it's unfortunate because a lot of it's the same time frame, so it's a lot to do. I don't know what Jimmy's doing. Jimmy has the permit. He'd like to sell the permit, but he has to have landings on the permit before he can sell the permit. So it's kind of in a limbo. And, we can tell you right now, there's plenty of guys from off island who love to set pots in this harbor, but that's a good thing about it being our harbor, is we don't have guys setting gear.
They get shot at.
Well, the whole fishery is in a kind of a turmoil, because they're only supposed to set, I think, I'm throwing a number out here. I think it's maximum 400 pots. It might even be that many. It might be 200.
I think it's 200.
200,
And
Bob.
these guys they're all setting trawls, and they're not even putting buoys on half of them, because they're setting a lot more pots than that. But there are a fair amount of conchs in the harbor, and the fact that we only take them every other year gives them a chance to come back. And it's amazing the amount of conchs that in places where you wouldn't think there'd be, like the thickest amount of conchs in the harbor, believe it or not, are right in the
Is
mooring
this on
field.
the agenda?
What's that?
Is this on the agenda?
Yeah, it's part of the shellfish regs.
Right.
So
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that that's in there. So.
Jim,
I just wanted to ask if all three fishermen that have state licenses have been renewing their town conch license every year.
Yes,
Okay.
all right, quickly, Jeff, under the recreational scallop dredge license for retired commercial scallopers, Bob had mentioned, being able to keep your 8 dredges on the boat if you have 8 dredges, instead of having to remove 4.
And that makes difference from our end. So makes sense practically that if you're gonna go and you got that number on the boat, like take it.
Like if I wanna go on a Saturday and get my 2 boxes.
Okay,
My- My comment on that is as long as they're still limited to 2 boxes and they are not allowed to sell, I don't care how many dredges they use.
Yeah, whether you use 8 once or 4 twice.
And you have to call JC or text JC and let him know you're going that day, so he knows you're out there getting it.
Exactly, exactly.
So clear, and the box have separate tags on them, so.
For no other reason than safety reasons too, just to, he's got to know what's going on. Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I'm gonna have to jump off here.
okay. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks, I hope.
Okay, gentlemen.
All righty.
You did.
Anything else on the shellfish regs?
No, I think we can get that final draft pulled together for next time.
Thank you.
Hopefully be done.
Anything else on warden notifications to the bay scallopers regarding red flag days and other vital communications? There's, of course, Jeff, you're probably aware, there's kind of been an issue where JC hasn't been, he hasn't set up the group text. And he's maybe texting a few people and telling them to pass the word. And I understand JC, I guess maybe a scalloper or 2 or more have expressed they don't want their number to be exposed to others. But it's possibly a way JC can get around that with a group text. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think. Given that we're at the end of February, I think we're on the path to a permanent solution to that.
Okay,
And I think we can.
so
Hopefully,
this issue, you're aware of it and working on it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. Any other comments or questions from the board on that particular item? Next on the agenda is the possible extension of the bay scallop season due to missed fishing days. Tara did mention that she has the paperwork prepared, I believe. She's drafted letters in advance if needed to support a potential bushel raise and a seasonal extension pending the direction of our discussion here. More support of the 2 potential requests relates to the days missed for cold weather and the abundant supply of bay scallops still left in the harbor.
She did say at the last meeting that she'd already notified DMF that we might be requesting an extension, so she had gotten that ruling.
so
Jeff.
I would just add, from our end, we obviously. We let. The select board and the DMF know that these discussions were happening. We said it's obviously pending some discussion. We didn't really take it too much farther than that, other than to make them aware that. These discussions were going on. So to be ready if something was gonna come of it. And they will said just keep us posted, so. We're kind of waiting.
What kind of time frame do we need to give DMF if we were to decide to extend the season, say, at our next meeting on March 1st, is that enough time to give DMF to give us 2 more weeks of season into April? Or is that too close?
Tara had indicated last meeting, February, that's why she prepared, I think. I think it's something we should go A or nay now, because she was pretty clear on February, maybe March 1st isn't gonna matter, but. That's why she went ahead and prepared the paperwork, because she wasn't gonna be here. So, I think it's something we ought to discuss. I think a 2-week extension is a good idea. I think that, a lot of missed days. I assume right now we're missing days. And if the scallops are out there, I think we ought to extend it and get them.
Her note actually says that. this is, she has the paperwork prepared and, she supports it. And it's depending upon, our discussion here tonight.
I think it should be both,
Both what?
both up to 7 boxes and it's an extension because we don't know that the 2-week extension is gonna be the full 2 weeks. We don't know if some of those days might be blanked out and if that's the case, then you could still go out and get more. And it would just be for the period of time that.
Jimmy's got his hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Jim.
I'd like to make a recommendation on this, if I could. I would like to see us extend the season 2 weeks and open Saturdays if we have a missed day during the week. I mean, this week we're going to miss every day, it looks like. And I think for 2 reasons, I'd rather see it extended than have a increase in bushels. That the market's kind of soft on the selling side. And I don't think putting more on the market at one time is going to help us. I think the extension is going to be a better option for the market.
Well, is it safe to say, Jim and Bob, and really everybody, that it's up to, obviously, you guys are not going to be getting scallops if you don't have a market to sell them. So I got a call last week from one of the buyers, Ted Jennison. He spoke for about 2.5 hours, and he was concerned about the extension for fear that we're going to end up with slunky scallops in the mix and possibly end up with a bad batch of scallops. He feels that the 5-month season was created by our forefathers, we'll say, for a reason. In a way, I beg to differ as far as temperature goes. I believe over the past 3 or 4 years, first 2 weeks of April have remained pretty cold. Certainly colder than the first 2 weeks of October, which I've been push raking in a t-shirt. But I guess also the scallops are starting to age out no matter what the temperature is. And I would like to think that every commercial scalloper is going to tell their opener, and the opener should be able to identify a slunk, smell the slunk, and toss it in the barrel, so that we're not, jeopardizing the product in any way. Ted, compared to the issue with the oysters this summer, and I think that's more of an apples to oranges comparison. And Ted also mentioned he may tell people he's buying from, he's not going to buy in April because he's transitioning to his summer season. And honestly, buying scallops into April is not really that beneficial to what he's doing. That's certainly up to Ted, and that's, like I say, up to you scallopers, whoever you're selling to, just make sure you have a market for them. And as Mr. Logan has said in the past, specifically, Jim, if the limit goes up to 7 boxes, you don't have to take 7 boxes. It's not mandatory. But if you were to have the market for them, then the opportunity is there. This marketing thing is unfortunate to me. I listened to a lot of explanation from Ted on it and about his Rolodex and how he can make 1,000 calls in a week and only get 2 people interested. Maybe the Rolodex is outdated. I don't know, but I'd like to think that this this bay scallop can still be marketed in a positive way. But that's really not up to us to discuss too much about, though we do need to be concerned with these scallops being sold and not simply thrown away if they're harvested. So Bob, something, Scott, go
Did
ahead.
Bob or Jim talk to any of the other fishermen? And get feedback as well, or, because I know that was part of last meeting's discussion, that somebody's gonna reach out to everybody else.
Do we have to go to the state to go fish on Saturdays? Or is that town ready?
Town regulation.
That's just the town. I'll double check while you guys have the conversation.
I would, if anything, I would say open up Saturdays from this point on for the rest of the season.
Instead of extending.
Yeah, I mean, I get what Teddy's talking about in April. I just, maybe he doesn't want to buy scallops in April. The off-island buyers probably still would, at least for the first week or 10 days. They do start to, you start to worry about the quality, but like you said, the big question here is gonna be, if you go to 7 boxes or you go to 6 days a week, or the opener's gonna want to open. I mean, a lot of the guys open their own, so they won't care.
Well, and here again, it's not mandatory. I mean,
Again, you're
with
right.
all due respect to Penelaine's wife, who came in and, mentioning that he's allergic, so he's not going to step in and open, and she was
Right.
concerned about the openers and I understand that, but that's really up to them to self-regulate.
I mean, if we opened up Saturdays now, that gives us another, 6 days to the season? That's almost like going a week into April.
Is that what Jim was suggesting?
Well, Jim was suggesting open Saturdays if you lose a day that week. I would just say at this point, just open it, period. We used to do it, Jimmy, didn't we? We used to open it right after the first of the year, right? We used to go to 6 days a week.
I think it was only as a makeup day,
Oh.
I believe.
There were years ago where we were,
It was always 6
we could
days.
always fish 6 days a
Yeah.
week. We went to 5, but
Just-
if that's a town regulation, it's easy enough to do.
Well,
And-
except it's gonna it'd probably take 2 weeks to get the select board to approve it, right?
Right.
So you're talking, now you're March. So now you're down
Well,
to
you
4
still get
days.
the month,
No, that's fine, you still, yeah.
but we don't have to go to state.
Right.
And if you wanted to, you could go to 7 boxes and go to,
But that's what I'm wondering
and
too,
go to Saturdays.
do a hybrid Saturdays, which, and 7 boxes, it'll start in March, it'll end up by the time the select board gets.
I mean, I haven't been fishing that much because of the weather, and I've had some medical stuff that I've had to deal with. But there still seems, from what I see, there still seems to be a fair amount of scallops in the harbor. I haven't even been around the corner to go up towards Pocomo, up towards Wellwinnet that way, and it seems like some of the boats that are up there are coming back fairly early, so Peter's right, we're probably not gonna harvest all these scallops. But at the same time, you don't wanna, if the buyers, if Teddy's not gonna buy them in April, then chances are Charlie's not gonna buy them in April, so that'll take about half the fleet out, because those guys have no place else to open. So the other guys that if they wanna fish, they could and ship them off island.
Well, I don't want to sit here and make that as an announcement
Right.
on behalf
No,
of
but
Teddy.
I understand what
It's-
I understand his point,
Yeah.
he is making the transition.
He needs to
somewhere.
communicate with who he's buying
Right.
from. We have 2 scallopers here, Kona or Adam, would you like to chime in on this?
Hello?
Yes, hi Kona, thank
What?
you.
Why not just start, not, it's too late for this year, but why not start April 15th next year, instead of extending it until April?
You mean October 15th, Kona?
Exactly.
Well, the issue is with that is the
Because
scallop,
you can start in April, according to the state. It's easier to do that than it is to extend it into April.
I understand, but the issue is the scallops that we're trying to harvest now will be dead in October.
I know, but that's
So we're-
not for this year, but next year,
Well, if anything, if we have the abundance of scallops that we have next year that we had this year,
Mm.
I think we should start at 6 boxes right from day one and not 5, because you know, that if we had started on November 1st with 6 boxes, we wouldn't be having this issue right now, because we didn't go to 6 boxes till almost the 20th of December.
Yeah.
So that's a good 6 weeks of the major.
Actually, we went to 6 boxes before Thanksgiving, though.
No, but it didn't enact till Christmas, right?
No,
Correct.
before
No,
then.
it was
No,
Thanksgiving.
it was before
It was
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I don't remember exact date, but.
Hmm.
I don't know. You know, the issue.
It was
we're
a
trying
week
to-
before Thanksgiving, actually. I know that. Yeah. Because you were the one that said it to do that.
I thought it was, maybe you're right. We did
Yeah.
do it. We did it right before Thanksgiving so we could get the
Exactly.
height of the market. Anyway, we're trying to figure out a way to not let all these scallops die in the shell, but I just don't know if there's a way to do that.
But if nobody's buying them, then nobody's buying them, though. You know, you can catch as many as you want, but if
Well,
they're not,
I believe there's some off-island buyers that are interested into that time frame, but
oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
Well, we can go round and round on this, that's the
Right.
problem. I think opening up Saturdays for the rest of the season, asking the select board that our recommendation is to open up Saturdays for the rest of the normal season. It's at least gonna pick up 4 days. And I don't know when their next meeting and how fast they can get on the agenda, but I think we got it as an emergency last time. Emergency item on the agenda. That'd be my motion if we're gonna talk about this, is that we open up Saturdays for the rest of the normal season.
And do you go to 7 boxes then too?
You know, so if you go to 7 boxes on 5 days a week, there's 35, that's 35 boxes. Now we're talking going to 7 boxes 6 days a week, if they have a full week, right?
Yeah.
So now we're talking 42 boxes. So I don't see a reason to go to 7 boxes if we're gonna open up every Saturday. Now, it could get wiped out by the weather, I'm with you, but you know, you stand a chance of really flooding. I'm hearing concerns about pricing and about opening, and you go to 7 boxes 6 days a week, you chance of really flooding the market out. That's what concerns me.
This could get on the selectmen's agenda for next week, right, the 26th.
Not sure if they have a meeting next week or not. I'd have to look.
Don't they meet every week?
Sometimes.
unless there's a 5th Wednesday.
There's only 4, so that would be the 4th Wednesday in February. Now, it is school vacation, so maybe they're not meeting for school
Right.
vacation, who knows, although none of them have kids, but.
I mean, this Saturday, Jim has thrown me for a loop. Wasn't thinking of it, and now I'm kind of concerned, you know, what do the buyers think about Saturday? Jim's got his hand up.
I just want to mention that the season was extended in 2018, so it's been
Yes.
done not that long ago.
Yes.
For 2 weeks, Jim?
I
Yeah.
think it went to the 22nd, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And kind of for the same reason, there were a lot of missed days. And there were a lot of scallops left to harvest. It was a late decision. And DMF was not happy with that. I recall it very clearly, and that's why Tara has the paperwork prepared and probably wants that decision.
I'm looking at a calendar. If we extended it to the 11th of April, that would give us nine days in April. The 31st is a Monday. So that would give them the first 4 days of April and the next 5 days of April. That would be the same equivalent as if you opened up Saturday now.
Okay, all right.
So that would be my motion, that we opened it till April 11th.
Stay at 6 boxes and open till April 11th.
Jeff?
If I may, you asked earlier, I certainly don't want to cause more hand wringing than necessary on this. As guys have been coming in to renew permits, we've had a few, like Bobby Gibbons, they slow trickle. It's been kind of mixed. People about opening, a lot of it relates to the same concern that you had with Ted about where they're gonna sell them and demand for it. From our end of natural resources. Don't want want to sound mean or callous by saying it, that's not our concern. I think biologically, we don't really have any objections. It's been so cold. I mean, if the water temperature was a lot warmer, we start to get, whenever some water gets over 50 and eelgrass starts to go, but the split was definitely more than I thought it was going to be. There was a lot of concern about higher limits and extra days from a pretty good handful of guys for the reasons that you talked about. But I mean, we haven't actively sent out a poll or told the fleet or done any of that, but that's just kind of the chatter that we're hearing around it.
The reason I made my motion is because it gives guys 9 more days. And if they have a market, they can go. If they don't have a market, they don't have to go. But it does give the ability to get some more of these sculpts out of the harbor.
And your motion would not include Saturdays.
No, because this would go to DMF. And the select board, it gives it time to get approved. And they get 9 more days. And it's not, I don't believe that the water's gonna warm up enough to make it an issue. And Tara has told us all that the biomass can handle the fishery. Even if only 4 or 5 guys go a day, that's another, say 5 guys going for those 9 days, that's another 50 bushels, 60 bushels that we got out of the harbor.
I'll second the motion. I think it makes perfect sense.
So the motion is to simply extend the season
Until
April
April 11th. Okay.
Include the fishing day of April 11th, which is that Friday.
through April 11th.
Right.
And that motion is seconded by Mr. Bossy, and I want to have discussion on this motion because there has been a lot of variables here. And I'll just reiterate that this is not mandatory. Anybody can stop fishing on March 31st. Any more discussion?
I think we want to create opportunities, even if they don't jump at them, and just open it up so they have the opportunity. And then not have to all of a sudden realize, oh, we're ended up a lot of non-fish days and,
The buyers are gonna
I
do what
can't
the
talk
buyers
about
want
money,
to do.
so.
Right.
And that'll dictate what the fishing will do.
Right.
The last meeting, Tara said 15 boats going. Roughly 15 boats going. He's going to Florida for a month. John Logan's going to Thailand. How many other people are not fishing?
You're gonna be down to probably 8 or 10 after.
So maybe that makes the buyers the last month of fishing go, does it less supply and, I mean, is Ted the only one that you know of that's,
Nobody else has reached out to me,
okay,
so my only concern with April would be that we should probably attach a water temperature to it. And if the harbor temperature were to go above a certain level, that would be considered unsafe.
Well, I'll make a friendly amendment that the water temperature goes above 50 degrees, the season's shut down.
Mhm.
Is that fair? That's the magic number, isn't it? 50? Yeah, pretty close.
Okay.
I mean, it's 33 right now, so
Right.
I'd be amazed if it shot up 20 degrees in the
Yeah.
next 6
Yeah,
weeks.
highly unlikely, but just to be on the safe side.
I still have to know
Other things to worry
first.
about.
Right. Okay, so from this discussion, we've simply amended to add water temperature that reaches 50 degrees, season ends. So we have a motion to extend the season to April 11th. It'll be a 5-day-a-week season, 6 boxes. And if the water temperature reaches 50 degrees, the extension ends. That motion's made by Mr. DeCosta, seconded by Mr. Bossy. Any more discussion? All in favor, Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
I,
Mr. DeCosta,
Aye.
Mr. Brace,
aye,
Mr. Sherlin,
All right.
the chair votes aye as well. All right,
We'll get that sent in tomorrow.
All right. We've handled our new business. Any public questions or comments? Anything for the next meeting? Our next meetings, March 4th and March 18th. Jeff, if you don't mind me asking one question of you?
Sure.
Is there discussion about this board becoming an appointed board versus an elected board that you could, any discussion that you could share with us on that?
Sure, I guess. I know there's I know I'm on it. So there's the town council study committee that's been working on an idea of converting the local government from an open town meeting select board form of government to eventually a town council, town manager form of government. And in reviewing, second, Jim just popped into the waiting room. I don't wanna. Not that he wants to hear.
No, thank you for that.
But, so anyways, so. In one of the reviews in that and reviewing the charter, the existing charter carves out provisions for a number of. Elected boards. It doesn't really get into appointed boards because that's at the discretion of the select board primarily. And there are a few, right? So there's this board, there is the, land bank, water commissioners. Concom was appointed.
Board.
HDC, planning board, there are a few. One of the things that the committee looked at in reviewing whether all of them should be appointed, some of them should be appointed, some of them should be elected. And the discussion that went around it, and please keep in mind that none of this is set in stone by any means, is one of the things that was looked at, and the group that is our consultant for that, the Collins Center, reviewed past election results and candidacies for all of the elected boards, and essentially created a number that said, are you getting candidates that run to fill the vacant seats? And looking at it year by year, the only board that didn't meet kind of that 1-to-1 threshold was the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. Their thought and talking about maybe thinking about this as an appointed board was to try to encourage people to participate, and by not meeting those thresholds for elections that. And their kind of. Third party view to that shows that you're not getting the participation necessary to fill those seats via election, and I know there's been. A lot of writing campaigns and things over time for the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. But in that group's discussion, I think there was a majority feeling that if we're having trouble generating candidates to run, that maybe being able to fill those vacant seats through appointment or not having to go through the process of being elected would help encourage participation. But like I said, that's not set in stone, but that's the discussion that.
All right, and I didn't want to drag out the meeting with this because it's not on the agenda, but I'm curious if how the board feels about discussing this at the next meeting. I don't know if this board can have any influence on this, on what's being discussed.
So I think absolutely, right, those are all public meetings too, right, they're not
All right,
some sort of like secret group.
Right. I'd simply like to be able to poll this board and how they feel.
For next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's fair, and
Okay.
if you would like, I could probably. Probably see if one of the members of that group, whether the chair or someone could attend and talk about that process, and we can probably even find some of the materials that were used as part of that discussion.
great. Okay. I said our next meeting, March 4th and March 18th, if there's nothing else, items for next meeting, get in touch with Peter or I. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, we'll just make sure that on the next meeting, we keep the app on the agendas for updates, so we know where we're going with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Um. Okay. So moved.
Second.
Motion's made to adjourn tonight's meeting by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. DeCosta?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
All right.
Mr. Sherlin?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Good night, everybody. This meeting's adjourned, 6:33.
I will think there may not be a huge update